Do you know what it feels like to carry a prophecy, not of greatness, but of limitation? To have the very person who should champion your dreams instead define the boundaries of your potential? Sophia, a woman of grace and quiet determination, knew this feeling intimately. At 36, she stood at the zenith of her career as one of Hamburg's most sought-after wedding planners. Her office, nestled discreetly behind a blossoming magnolia tree, was a sanctuary of dreams, meticulously organized folders, and the faint scent of lilies. Every detail, from the delicate lace on a bridal gown to the precise curvature of a calligraphic flourish on an invitation, was handled with an almost sacred reverence. She orchestrated fairy tale beginnings for countless couples, pouring her heart into ensuring their perfect day, yet her own narrative remained stubbornly unwritten. Her life was a testament to independence, a mosaic of carefully built successes, but beneath the polished surface lay a single, sharp shard of pain. It wasn't the relentless hours, nor the demanding clients, nor even the occasional logistical nightmare that truly weighed upon her. It was the echo of a voice, a deeply familiar voice, that had, just a year prior, delivered a verdict she had fought her entire life to disprove. It was the voice of her father, a man steeped in tradition, whose love, though present, often manifested as a rigid expectation. He saw her achievements, her financial stability, her unwavering dedication to her craft, but he perceived them as substitutes, not complements, to what he believed was her true calling. A conventional marriage, a settled life defined by the parameters he understood. "You are too old, Sophia," he had declared, his words like stones dropping into still water, creating ripples of doubt that spread through her resolve. "Too independent. No man will want a woman who stands so tall on her own. You have missed your chance." The air in the small, tastefully decorated living room had thickened with unspoken judgment, turning Sophia's breath into a ragged gasp. He meant it as a warning, a lament even, but to Sophia it felt like a curse, a dismissive wave of a hand over the entirety of her being. She had left that day with a knot in her stomach, a bitter taste on her tongue, and a silent, burning vow to rewrite the ending her father had prematurely authored. His words became an invisible brand, a constant reminder of a perceived failing, a quiet sorrow that accompanied her through every joyous wedding she meticulously planned for others. They were the very fabric of the problem she carried, an internal antagonist more formidable than any external challenge, shaping her worldview. Her father's pronouncement, delivered with the heavy finality of a decree, had settled deep within Sophia's spirit, a cruel seed planted in fertile ground. It wasn't just his words that stung, it was the entire framework of traditional expectations he represented, a world where a woman's worth was measured not by her achievements or her character, but by her marital status, by her ability to attract a partner who would, in his eyes, complete her. He had seen her fierce independence, her unwavering drive, not as strengths, but as insurmountable obstacles to her happiness, barriers to a life he deemed appropriate. This wasn't merely a disagreement, it was a fundamental clash of philosophies, a chasm separating two generations, two distinct visions of womanhood. Sophia felt a chilling isolation descend upon her. She was a master of connections, weaving together disparate elements to create harmonious unions for others. Yet in her personal life, she felt increasingly disconnected, adrift in a sea of societal expectations and familial judgment. But within that isolation, something fierce ignited. The sorrow began to transmute into a steely resolve, a quiet defiance. She would not let his words define her. She would not let his narrow vision dictate her destiny. Instead, she would use them as fuel, an unconventional, painful source of motivation. She doubled down on her work, pouring every ounce of her prodigious talent and tireless energy into her wedding planning business. Each successful event, each beaming couple she sent down the aisle, became a silent repudiation of his cynicism. She spent countless late nights refining blueprints for reception halls, poring over fabric swatches, negotiating with vendors, her focus absolute, almost obsessive. She had always been meticulous, but now her dedication took on a new, almost spiritual dimension. It became her sanctuary, a place where her worth was undeniable, where her precision and passion were celebrated. There, in the controlled chaos of event management, she found her voice, not in words, but in action, in creation. The elegant floral arrangements, the perfectly timed musical cues, the seamless transitions from ceremony to feast, these were her eloquent arguments against her father's outdated beliefs. But even as her professional life soared, a quiet battle raged within her. The insidious doubt would sometimes whisper to her in the quiet hours, a cruel echo of his voice. Was she truly too strong, too self-sufficient to be loved? Had her independence somehow rendered her undesirable? These were the questions that lingered, heavy and unspoken, even as she smiled reassuringly at a nervous bride or offered a steady hand to a jittery groom. Her heart, though fiercely guarded, yearned for a connection that honored her whole self, not just a part of it. Sophia's world, meticulously structured and aesthetically flawless, continued to expand, drawing in clients from across Germany and beyond, all seeking her unique touch, her legendary ability to transform abstract dreams into tangible, breathtaking realities. She moved through her days with a quiet competence, a calm authority that belied the emotional storms she often navigated for her clients. Brides fretted over seating charts, grooms agonized over vows, and Sophia, with a soothing word or a subtle redirection, would guide them back to the joyful purpose of their union. She saw the raw vulnerability beneath the celebratory facade, the anxieties and hopes that simmered just below the surface of every grand occasion. This innate empathy, her profound understanding of human connection, was her true superpower, far beyond her organizational prowess. It allowed her to craft not just events, but experiences, moments that resonated deeply with the spirit of each couple. Yet, ironically, this very sensitivity made her father's words cut even deeper. She understood the fear of loneliness, the ache of unspoken desires, for she witnessed it daily in the eyes of those she helped. And sometimes, looking into the mirror, she saw a reflection of those fears in her own gaze. Her apartment, though beautifully appointed with carefully curated art and books, often felt too quiet, too spacious, especially on Sunday evenings after a particularly demanding wedding weekend. She would make herself a cup of herbal tea, light a single candle, and allow herself to simply be, away from the demands of clients and the echoes of judgment. In these solitary moments, the weight of her father's words felt heaviest. Too independent, he had said, as if independence were a malady, a barrier to affection rather than a foundation for a truly equal partnership. She knew intellectually that true love should complement, not diminish, one's strength. But the emotional imprint of his disapproval was a stubborn shadow. She often wondered if, in her relentless pursuit of professional excellence, she had inadvertently erected walls around her heart, making it difficult for anyone to truly see beyond the successful wedding planner to the woman who yearned for connection. She longed for someone who saw her not just for her achievements, but for the quiet strength, the deep empathy, and the hidden vulnerability she rarely revealed. She dreamt of a love that celebrated her independence, not sought to tame it. She yearned for a partner who understood that her meticulous nature wasn't a flaw, but a deeply ingrained habit born of a desire to create beauty and order in a world that often felt chaotic and unpredictable. She knew, instinctively, that such a connection would be rare, a precious gem, but she wasn't sure if she was truly open to finding it. The universe, in its often ironic wisdom, has a way of introducing the extraordinary into the meticulously ordinary. For Sophia, this disruption came in the form of Eric, a renowned architect whose name was whispered with reverence in the highest echelons of design. Eric was a man consumed by ambition and burdened by success. His latest project, a sprawling, ultra-modern cultural center on the outskirts of Hamburg, was suffering from a crisis of identity. The concrete skeleton stood, imposing yet sterile, but the soul of the building, Its aesthetic and emotional connection to the community it was meant to serve felt elusive. He was brilliant, undeniably, but rigid, bound by blueprints and structural integrity, often overlooking the human element. He was under immense pressure, his reputation on the line, and his frustration was a palpable shroud around him. It was a mutual acquaintance, a frustrated event coordinator who knew both their reputations for excellence, who suggested Eric consult Sophia. Not for an event, but for something far more nebulous, to infuse the building's internal spaces with a sense of warmth, flow, and purpose beyond mere function. Eric, initially skeptical of a wedding planner offering architectural advice, agreed to a meeting out of sheer desperation. He met Sophia in her serene office, expecting delicate sketches and floral suggestions. Instead, he found a woman whose eyes, though kind, held an unnerving depth, a gaze that seemed to peel back layers of superficiality. He outlined his dilemma with a series of clipped, technical terms, gesturing vaguely at complex schematics. He spoke of lines, light, and volume, but Sophia listened for the unspoken, for the whispers of human experience. When he finished, she didn't offer immediate solutions. Instead, she asked him to describe the feelings he wanted people to experience within his structure. She asked about the quiet moments, the unspoken interactions, the way light might fall on a worn book, or the path a child might naturally take through a gallery. Eric, accustomed to grand pronouncements and critical analyses, found himself disarmed by her quiet, persistent probing. He found himself articulating anxieties he hadn't dared to voice to his own team. Sophia's ability to intuit the deeper human need, to see beyond the cold hard lines of a building to the emotional landscape it would create, was startling. She spoke not of grand designs, but of subtle cues, of creating intimacy in vast spaces, of guiding emotion with strategic placement, of turning a mere building into a living, breathing entity that embraced its inhabitants. In that moment, Eric didn't just see a wedding planner. He saw an artist, a philosopher of human connection, someone who possessed a profound understanding of the delicate balance between form and feeling, a hidden genius he hadn't known existed. Eric, a man whose life revolved around logic and quantifiable results, found himself inexplicably drawn to Sophia's unconventional approach. He saw in her not just a planner, but a visionary, someone who could articulate the very soul of a space, transform cold stone into an inviting embrace. He hired her, not as a consultant in the traditional sense, but as a silent partner, an artistic collaborator who would help him infuse his monolithic cultural center with the elusive human warmth it lacked. Their working relationship began with a cautious curiosity from Eric's side and a quiet confidence from Sophia's. She walked through his imposing structures, not with a tape measure or a blueprint in hand, but with an almost spiritual sensitivity. She ran her fingers along cold concrete, closed her eyes to feel the drafts, observed the way the light shifted with the hours. She spoke of the subtle scent of old books in a library, the echo of laughter in a performance hall, the quiet contemplation of an art gallery. She didn't redesign walls or shift foundations. She wove narratives through the spaces, suggesting where a comfortable bench might invite quiet conversation, where a strategically placed window might frame a breathtaking view, where a splash of natural light could transform a dreary corridor into a path of discovery. She introduced warmth through textures, sound through carefully selected acoustics, and emotion through the thoughtful placement of art and foliage. Eric, initially resistant to such soft influences, found himself captivated. Her insights were not just aesthetic, they were profound, rooted in a deep understanding of human psychology and interaction. He saw his grand designs, once stark and imposing, begin to breathe, to invite, to promise experience beyond mere viewing. As they spent countless hours together, discussing not just architectural challenges but life, art, and the pursuit of meaning, a different kind of connection began to form. Eric, accustomed to professional detachment, found himself sharing vulnerabilities, moments of doubt about his own work, his own life. Sophia, in turn, slowly let down her guard, revealing glimpses of the deep-seated yearning beneath her poised exterior. But even as their professional bond deepened into something unmistakably personal, the echoes of her father's words would sometimes resurface. Too independent, too old, they were insidious whispers, challenging the nascent hope blossoming within her. Could a man as celebrated, as driven as Eric, truly see her, value her, for who she was, independence and all? Or was this merely another professional partnership, destined to remain within the confines of intellectual collaboration? She wrestled with these questions in the quiet of her apartment, even as she felt her heart respond to Eric's presence, to his quiet admiration, to the way his eyes lingered on her with an unreadable intensity. Their collaboration reached a critical juncture with the approach of the grand unveiling of the cultural center. Weeks before the official opening, a catastrophic technical malfunction plunged a significant portion of the building into darkness, compromising not just the lighting but the entire climate control system, threatening irreplaceable art installations. Panic rippled through Eric's team. Millions were at stake, his reputation teetered on a precipice, and the opening, meticulously planned for months, seemed destined for failure. Eric, usually a beacon of calm under pressure, was visibly shaken, his usual composure dissolving into frustrated desperation. He saw only the technical problem, the impossible logistics, the potential for ruin. While his engineers scrambled to diagnose the electrical fault, Sophia, with her characteristic quiet observation, noticed something else. The emergency lighting, though functional, cast harsh, unsettling shadows. The sudden drop in temperature was not just a threat to art, but to the comfort and safety of the expected dignitaries. More importantly, she saw the fear in Eric's eyes, the crushing weight of his responsibility. She understood that this wasn't just a technical issue, it was a crisis of perception, a moment that could define or destroy everything he had built. While others focused on fixing wires and restoring power, Sophia, with a serene intensity, began to orchestrate a contingency plan that transcended mere functionality. She envisioned not just a repair, but a transformation of the crisis into an experience. She suggested bringing in strategically placed, high-quality temporary lighting that would not just illuminate, but create dramatic, purposeful chiaroscuro, turning the darkness into an artistic statement. She proposed bringing in discreet, beautiful heating elements disguised as part of the decor, transforming the chill into an intimate, almost cozy atmosphere. She knew the power of narrative, of turning a flaw into a feature. Most crucially, she spoke to Eric, not about the problem, but about the spirit of the event, about the resilience they could project, about how this unexpected challenge could actually highlight the unique qualities of his architecture and their collaboration. She reminded him of their shared vision to create a space that embraced human experience, even unexpected ones. Her calm authority, her ability to see beauty and opportunity in chaos, was a revelation. Eric watched her, mesmerized, as she moved through the panicked team, issuing quiet instructions, her presence radiating a powerful, reassuring energy. She wasn't just solving a problem, she was redefining it, demonstrating a leadership born not of power, but of profound empathy and creative genius. In that moment, as the grand opening approached and the chaos mounted, Eric saw Sophia not just as a collaborator, but as his anchor, his muse, and his undeniable equal. He realized he didn't just admire her, he needed her, completely and irrevocably. The crisis, rather than separating them, had unveiled the true depth of her worth, and in doing so, had solidified his deepest feelings for her. The cultural center's grand opening, against all odds, was a triumph. Sophia's ingenious, elegant solutions turned what could have been a disaster into a masterclass in atmospheric design and resourceful innovation. The strategically placed lighting bathed the space in a warm, inviting glow, creating pockets of intimacy and drawing the eye to the art with dramatic intent. The cleverly disguised heating elements ensured comfort without disrupting the aesthetic. Guests remarked on the unique ambiance, the intentional mood, utterly oblivious to the near catastrophe that had been averted. Eric, standing amidst the throng of impressed patrons, felt a surge of pride unlike any he had experienced before. It wasn't just for his building, but for the woman who stood beside him, her quiet smile radiating a deep satisfaction. He introduced her not merely as a consultant, but as his visionary partner, his co-creator, the light in his darkest hour. His gaze, when it rested on her, held a warmth and intensity that transcended professional admiration. That night, after the last guest had departed and the last caterer had left, they stood alone in the cavernous main hall, now silent and bathed in the soft glow of the remaining temporary lights. The air, cool and quiet, hummed with a different kind of energy. Eric turned to Sophia, his eyes earnest, vulnerable. "Sophia," he began, his voice rough with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you. You saved everything. You saw what I couldn't. You saw me." He reached out, gently taking her hand, his thumb tracing patterns on her skin. "I've built grand structures my entire life, but you've built something within me I didn't know was missing. A space for possibility, for true connection." He paused, gathering his courage, his gaze unwavering. "Sophia, I've fallen in love with you. Not just with your mind, not just with your talent, but with every part of you. Your strength, your empathy, your quiet courage. Your independence, which I now see not as a barrier, but as the most beautiful part of your being." The words, direct and heartfelt, hung in the air, echoing softly in the vast space. Sophia's heart, long guarded by the fortifications of self-sufficiency and the painful echoes of her father's judgment, fluttered. This was the connection she had yearned for, a love that saw her wholly, celebrated her entirely. There was no hesitancy in his voice, no fear of her strength. It was a profound recognition, a love that promised to complement, not diminish. Tears, hot and unexpected, pricked her eyes. She hadn't realized how deeply she had craved such affirmation, how much the lack of it had weighed upon her. In that sacred silence, under the glow of lights she herself had arranged, she realized the truth. The hidden gem had been found, not by chance, but by the relentless pursuit of her own authentic self, and by the perceptive eyes of a man who truly understood her worth. Sophia's acceptance of Eric's heartfelt confession was not a giddy, breathless surrender, but a quiet, profound affirmation. It was a recognition that she had finally found a partner who saw her not through the lens of societal expectation or traditional gender roles, but through the pure, unadulterated lens of genuine admiration and respect. Their relationship blossomed with a breathtaking speed and depth that surprised them both. They were two highly independent, driven individuals, yet together they found a harmony that enhanced their individual strengths rather than diluting them. Eric admired her grace under pressure, her intuitive understanding of human emotions, and her unwavering authenticity. Sophia cherished his quiet thoughtfulness, his intellectual curiosity, and his absolute belief in her capabilities. There were no games, no pretense, just an honest, deep connection rooted in shared values and mutual admiration. Their love story was a testament to the idea that true connection happens when two people are brave enough to show up as their authentic selves, flaws and all. Their conversations were not just about their work, but about their pasts, their dreams, their vulnerabilities. Sophia, for the first time, felt truly safe to share the quiet pain of her father's words, the sting of being deemed too much by someone she deeply loved. Eric listened with empathy, his hand often finding hers, his presence a silent rebuke to those damaging echoes. He never tried to diminish her independence, he celebrated it as the very quality that had drawn him to her. Months later, under a sky painted with the hues of a Hamburg sunset, Eric proposed. It wasn't a grand, public spectacle, but a quiet, intimate moment in their newly shared apartment, filled with the aroma of Sophia's favorite freshly baked bread. He knelt not out of convention, but out of reverence, offering not just a ring, but a promise of a life built on equality, understanding, and unwavering support. Sophia, her heart, overflowing with a gratitude she hadn't known was possible, said yes. The next step, however, was a significant one for Sophia. As a wedding planner, she had crafted countless invitations, each one a harbinger of joy and new beginnings. But this invitation was different. It was her own. She designed it with the same meticulous care she gave her clients, but with a deeply personal resonance. It was gold-embossed, elegant, understated, bearing the names of Sophia and Eric. And then, with a tremor of anticipation and a flicker of her old defiance, she addressed one to her father. It was a silent challenge, an unspoken response to his words, a declaration that her story was hers to write, and she had written a glorious chapter. The wedding day dawned crisp and clear, a perfect Hamburg spring morning. The venue, a beautifully restored historical hall Eric had discreetly acquired and Sophia had transformed, was a breathtaking vision of elegance and warmth. Every detail, from the minimalist floral arrangements to the soft lighting, spoke of Sophia's signature touch, blending her aesthetic with Eric's architectural sensibilities. It was a celebration of their union, but also a quiet triumph of Sophia's spirit. Among the guests, dignified and somewhat rigid, sat Sophia's father. His initial reaction to the invitation had been a mixture of stunned silence and a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in his gaze, perhaps recognition, perhaps lingering disbelief. He had arrived, dressed impeccably, but his posture held a certain stiffness, a wall of ingrained tradition that had always stood between him and his daughter's more unconventional choices. He watched Eric, the renowned architect, with an air of assessment, still perhaps weighing his daughter's choice against his own preconceived notions. The ceremony itself was deeply personal, filled with heartfelt vows and profound declarations of love. As the evening progressed, the hall filled with warmth and laughter, a testament to the powerful connection between Sophia and Eric and the joy of their gathered loved ones. Then came the moment for the toasts. Eric, with a genuine smile, raised his glass, speaking eloquently of Sophia's strength, her vision, her capacity for love, and his immense gratitude for her presence in his life. He spoke of how she had transformed his world, not just his work, but his very being. When it was Sophia's turn, a hush fell over the room. She stood, radiant in her simple, elegant gown, a quiet confidence radiating from her. Her eyes swept across the room, lingering for a moment on Eric, then on her friends, and finally, with a deliberate intensity, on her father. His gaze met hers, a flicker of apprehension in his eyes. She took a deep breath, her voice clear and strong, resonating with an emotion that was both vulnerable and triumphant. "Many of you know me as a wedding planner," she began, a soft chuckle rippling through the room. "I spend my days crafting perfect beginnings for others, but today, I stand here, starting my own, and for this, I have many people to thank." Her gaze returned to her father. "To my father," she said, her voice dropping slightly, imbued with a profound, almost dramatic irony. "You taught me many things. You taught me the value of hard work, of self-reliance, of building a life for myself. And," she continued, a faint, knowing smile gracing her lips, "a year ago, you also taught me something else. You told me I was too old, too independent for love. You told me I had missed my chance." A ripple of murmuring went through the room, as guests exchanged curious glances. Sophia's father visibly flinched, his face paling, his shoulders tensing. The directness of her address, the public unveiling of his past words, hung in the air, thick with unspoken tension. This was not an attack, but a reclamation. The silence in the room was palpable, broken only by the soft clinking of glasses. Sophia held her father's gaze, her eyes unwavering, not with accusation, but with a profound, almost sorrowful understanding. This was the moment of reckoning, not just for him, but for her, a final release from the chains of his expectations. Those words, Sophia continued, her voice gaining strength, echoing the depth of her journey, could have broken me. They could have convinced me to shrink, to conform, to believe that my independence was a flaw. But instead, Father, she paused, a genuine smile now blooming on her face. Bright and clear as the morning sun, they became my greatest motivation. Her voice softened, now infused with a tender, unburdened love. They fueled my determination to prove, not to you, but to myself, that a woman's worth is not defined by external validation, by age, or by adherence to outdated notions of what should be. It is defined by her spirit, by her resilience, by her capacity to love and be loved, wholly and authentically. She turned her head slightly towards Eric, her smile deepening, a silent promise of forever in her eyes. They propelled me towards a future I couldn't have imagined, towards a man who not only sees my independence as a strength, but celebrates it. Eric, she said, her voice now brimming with pure, unadulterated joy, you didn't just see the wedding planner, you saw the woman who loved creating beauty, who cherished connection, and who, despite everything, never stopped believing in true partnership. You saw me, truly saw me, for the first time. She turned back to the room, her arm now linked with Eric's. So, to my father, I raise this glass, not with bitterness, but with immense gratitude. Thank you for giving me the most powerful push I ever needed. Thank you for reminding me that true love waits for no timetable, and that the greatest validation comes from within. The room erupted in applause, a wave of relief and admiration washing over the guests. Sophia's father, his eyes glistening, slowly rose. He didn't speak, couldn't, but he raised his own glass, a small, almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement passing between them. In that moment, the rigid wall within him seemed to soften, if only by an inch. Sophia's triumph was complete. She had found love, yes. But more importantly, she had found herself, utterly and irrevocably, on her own terms. Do you ever feel the weight of an unfair judgment, a dismissal of your dreams or your true worth? Do you ever let someone else's narrow vision define the boundaries of your own potential? Sophia's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the very words meant to diminish us can become the fuel for our greatest victories. It's a testament to the unyielding spirit of a woman who chose to redefine her narrative, proving that true worth shines brightest when it's nurtured from within, independent of external expectations. Her journey reminds us that our strength, our independence, our very unique qualities, are not obstacles to love or success, but the foundations upon which authentic connection is built. It teaches us that the most profound validation comes not from others, but from our unwavering belief in ourselves. So, the next time someone tries to tell you who you are, or what you can or cannot achieve, remember Sophia. Remember her quiet defiance, her unwavering commitment to her own truth. Let their doubt become your stepping stone, their cynicism your catalyst. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, someone who might be struggling under the weight of similar judgments. Remind them that their story is still being written, and they hold the pen. The best chapters often begin when someone tells you it's impossible.